acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. And surely you'll buy your pint, and surely I'll buy mine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang
Here in the permanent complaint, which is the fact that the board of government of a grant-aided school within the school area has acted or is proposed to act unreasonably with respect to the exercise of any power conferred or the performance of any duty imposed under the relevant provision, or has failed to discharge such duty. We could go on then into a big long speech with what is a relevant provision that the board of governors would have to discharge. And in this case it comes down to Article 21, right here.
Paragraphs 21 and 22 of the 2006 order. Which you need to correct, Worship.
No, the 86 one. The 86 part, that's the other one.
You're absolutely right.
But 21, the Education and Libraries Order, Northern Ireland, 1986. And basically it says the Board of Governors of a controlled school is required under legislation to ensure that 1. The school day includes a collective worship, paid at the branch assembly for pupils. The collective worship is so arranged as is not distinctive of any particular religious denomination. And the collective worship is arranged so that the school shall be open to pupils of all religious denominations for education other than religious education. And if we look at in the next page there, Article 21, subparagraph 2, in a controlled school other than a controlled integrated school, the religious education required by Article 1 shall be undenominational religious education, that is to say, education based on the Holy Scriptures according to some authoritative version or versions thereof. but excluding education as to any tenet distinctive of any particular religious denomination, and the collective worship required by paragraph 1 in such schools shall not be distinctive of any particular religious denomination. That is basically what we are today. Is the Board of Governors of Banbridge High School has probably started in relation to that collective worship. Now, there are two issues that we have identified here that, and we're going to have to discuss these before we go any further. Mr. Scott, you have alluded to the fact that there is an ongoing police investigation in relation to hate crime. Is that right?
You don't know if there's an investigation.
Well, Mr Unsworth is perhaps the person to talk to, because he's had recent contact with the PSNI. It was reported in the press yesterday, and the SELB, as I understand it, have been in touch with the police, so perhaps they are in a better position to comment.
Well, I think you have made an investigation, you have made an allegation to the police. You made a complaint. Otherwise, how have the police become involved? You made a complaint to the police.
Well, it could have been me. It could have been somebody else. It could have been more than one person.
What have you? No, but we need to determine. It's very important. It's very important for the outcome of this.
Well,
you made a complaint to the police.
I alluded to the fact within a very short time to various representatives in the school, including Mr Bell, SMT, teacher governors, the head of RE, that if we couldn't go through the normal channels and get some kind of reasoned, measured and appropriate response, that have to approach other people.
There's nothing wrong with that, Mr Scott. But what I need to determine is that if there is an ongoing investigation in which you are probably involved as a complainant, have you made a statement to the police? Are the police pursuing an investigation? If that were the case, then we would have to look at whether or not it's appropriate for this tribunal to consider, to continue to consider this, and how it might prejudice, and it very seriously could prejudice any outcome of any police investigation. Now, if we thrash this thing through and it gets more publicity and like that, obviously, if the police decided to take any criminal action against any person, they would obviously have a very strong defence that their access to a fair trial has been prejudiced by the holding of this tribunal. That is something we would need to be very careful about before we go any further.
Yeah, I would agree, Chair. We have to be very careful, and I had that conversation with John yesterday. Yes, a complaint or an allegation has been made to the police. Whether or not they're actually have decided to investigate it, although there was a quote in the Banbridge Chronicle saying that a spokesperson for the police said they are. But
I have no knowledge of I can speak Mr Scott suggested that I have no knowledge of what was said to the Banbridge leader. I mean, obviously you can read as I can through the board solicitors. Yesterday I made this inquiry. The board solicitors made contact with the PSNI, and obviously there are issues of confidentiality around this issue here, so obviously the PSNI could not and would not disclose the name of any complainant. What they were able to confirm was that a complaint had been lodged with them around events within Banbridge High School in May 2013, and that accordingly an investigation had commenced.
And similarly, they would not and should not expect any complainant, be it myself and or anyone else, to enter into any discussion about it, because it could just as well prejudice the potential future proceedings that you allude to.
Well, exactly, and that, Mr Scott, is what we're trying to determine here, that if there is an ongoing police investigation, and let's face it, the allegation may be a hate crime issue, which is a criminal offence and is far outside the remit of this tribunal, that if such an investigation were proceeding at the moment, and if we are to proceed to hold a hearing and determine any factors through this tribunal, it could very seriously prejudice the outcome of the police investigation, and in fact could prevent a prosecution taking place that may otherwise take place by reason of the fact of this tribunal.
But therein lies the problem, Chair. The facts that we know are that it was raised with the police that there may be hate crime has occurred. Whether or not the police, I don't know how they work. I don't know at what point it becomes an active investigation or whether it gets a case number. I don't know how that works. All we know, the only facts we know are that the matter was raised with the police, and we simply don't know if they're investigating it.
Again, all I can confirm is that through the information provided to the board solicitors, the PSNI have said there is an investigation underway as a result of a complaint made to them regarding hate crime around events that occurred in Banbridge High School in May 2013. Now,
And
those may be
beyond,
events that
Chair, sorry, and beyond 2013.
So, sorry, Mr. Clark.
And beyond 2013. Events and beyond May 2013.
Well,
So what we have established so far is that there has been a complaint made to the police, and that complaint is still ongoing.
No, we haven't established if it's ongoing or not,
Well,
Chair.
Mr.
No, John has said it
so
is.
I'm saying the information provided to the board solicitors through an query that they made to the PSNI yesterday afternoon. I asked for them to do this because I was advised by them that it could be pertinent by the board's legal services, it could be pertinent to this proceedings. The PSNI reported back that a complaint had been lodged with them, that an investigation had been initiated. Now, I have no information at all. They didn't provide information about what stage that investigation was at.
Mr. Hearn, you alluded to the fact that you're not aware, and obviously so you're not aware of what procedures the police would take, and I would claim to be an expert on them either, but I would understand that it would be, once a complaint is made to the police and under the police charter, that they're obliged to investigate that report. They're obliged to keep the complainant informed of the process of any such investigation and the conclusion of any investigation, whether it concludes in a recommendation for further legal proceedings, or whether it concludes in the fact that the complaint is concluded and there's no case to be established. They would be obliged to notify the parties involved, and would be failing on the duty if they didn't. So I think we may be able to think from that there is a probability, a high probability.
Well, I would rather hear that from the police than anybody else.
Oh, they're the only ones who can answer the question. I agree with you, Mr.
I had some, sorry Chair, if I can just add to this. I had an email correspondence with Mr Unsworth on Friday where he was wanted to know directly from himself, the CT1 complainant, if there was a ongoing PSNI investigation, and if there was, what stage it was at. And I did say that if there is, if it's been made by a person or more than one person, that that was a matter for the police, and it would be entirely separate, and it would not be appropriate for anybody who had made a complaint to be divulging that knowledge ahead of what may be, is or is not a police investigation. And I'm afraid I think that's quite black and white.
Well, we're not out here to determine this morning who made the complaint. Our only issue is this morning if the complaint has been made and if that investigation is ongoing. And such as relates to the facts of this case, I think that we may have to take that into consideration before we proceed.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only thing that's factual is that the matter was raised. The matter was raised with the police.
Yes.
Now, there's been no developments since that time that we're aware of. So we don't know whether the police have said that's not worth investigating, or whether they're investigating it, or we just don't know.
That's why I say there is an onus in the police, under the police charter, to keep parties informed once a complaint is made. That's my understanding.
Well, I'm sure they will do, but when that occurs...
Is that the PSNI reported to the board solicitors yesterday afternoon that an investigation was underway, had commenced. But I mean, I didn't ask anything more, nor did they, about that. And that that it appeared to relate to issues which this tribunal are also considering.
So what then, Chair, through you to John, is what did your legal people advise?
Well, again, their advice through you, Chair.
It's a decision that we
decision of the tribunal panel.
What I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, just for a few minutes, I want to adjourn to allow us just to discuss this and what we've heard so far. Sorry you haven't got involved yet, but it's important that we sort of this. So we can just ask you to leave us for a few minutes.
Just before we do that, last question I put there was, if the legal people yesterday afternoon came back with news that the police confirmed there's an investigation, what then on foot of that did the legal people advise?
Well, I think it was to establish just exactly if you could confirm any further this morning the exact where that investigation lies at the moment. You
and we can't. That's the problem.
So it comes down to we're going to have to just decide today on the basis of the fact that the only information we have is that a police investigation may be proceeding at this moment in time. If that were so, we're going to have to make a decision here today as to whether it would be wise for us to proceed with this hearing or to adjourn until we have more concrete determination that the police investigation is totally finished and there's no case to answer. That doesn't mean that there's no case to answer within a tribunal, that there's no criminal case to answer, or there's not sufficient evidence to proceed with the criminal, whatever reason they may give. But we need to know for certain that the police have washed their hands of the matter. Because for us to try and determine this today, and the police in a month or two attempt to send papers off to the prosecution service, as soon as they would find out that this has been the subject of a judicial review, which has got quite some publicity or whatever, they would probably not take the case, or if they did, the defendant's solicitor were going to say, we have no chance of a fair trial because of the publicity this matter has already received. So I'm going to ask you to retire for just a few moments. We will have a short discussion and we will decide.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's discussing your complaint, if you do that. Keep asking.
Okay.
I think
I know I did.
What happens? Well, sorry for this inconvenience.
Can we leave our stuff?
Yes,
I never leave my stuff.
You see, he may not have made the police complaint, he probably did, but he may
It
have.
has, but he's
I
not
have
going
been
to
told
admit
that the solicitor guide and he did not ask.
that. And we cannot.
He's the one that did.
I don't know. The solicitor did not ask because she wouldn't ask.
No, they wouldn't be entitled to it. They wouldn't get an answer today.
No, but we can't.
The issue as far as the solicitor is concerned is that the police investigation is bound to be examining or trying to establish the very same facts that you are trying to establish,
Yeah.
i.e. what actually happened at the assembly, and he's saying on other events as well, by which he means the literature, I presume. And that was the concern of the solicitor. That this tribunal is trying just to establish facts and around exactly the same matters that the police investigation will be trying to establish facts around. Now, at the end of the day, Brent Harron, sharp enough, has said, well, what did the solicitors actually say? Was their advice that this tribunal should proceed or should not proceed? The solicitor at the end was fairly equivocal about the thing, and that they're essentially separate processes, and one could conflict with the other. To be honest, the person's going to lose out most.
That's what I'm saying. If they want to run with it.
But no, we can't do that. We would have a duty as a tribunal to ensure that we don't conflict with any other statutory legal requirement.
But if we don't know
And the
who
solicitor's
made
advice was that's
if
a
we
matter
don't
of
know
faith.
who made the thing to the police.
It's not a matter of who made.
No, it's
No,
not.
that's
But
what
that doesn't affect him. He's the one. He's the claimant.
No,
We should be able to hear
We
that.
do know. We're everything we have done so far and everything we will do will be subject to the rules of disclosure and discovery.
Yes.
And if someone was to make an application, a legal application under the rules of discovery, everything we have discussed and every phone call that we have made and everything that we have tried to elicit will be subject to discovery.
Oh, yeah.
We have, through John, and rightly so, contacted the legal service, contacted the court, and we are told at this moment in time there is an investigation. And it hasn't terminated.
No, it certainly hasn't. No.
He is telling us that, he's telling us nothing because he said, well, maybe someone, it's not up to me to tell you whether and who made a complaint. We are aware
That's
that...
why I put the pressure on him.
Yeah.
You know, because telling him that he runs it.
But he's not the one.
Scuffer.
No, but he's not the one on trial. What is on trial here, from a legal point of view, is jurisprudence. Is really what is on trial here. Is procedure. By continuing this, will we conflict with the rules of justice? And we will.
But we don't know, you see, because
we
we
do
don't
know.
know whether the police are going to run with it or not.
We don't know that.
We don't know yet.
But
No.
what we will have to do, is the legal services, this time right to the police. Police are very, very, very guarded about
Yes.
what they say on the
Yes.
phone to anybody
Yes.
reporting to
Yes.
whoever.
Yes.
There was a time when I could have lifted the phone and found all this out. But as the years progressed from I retired from the police, there are less and less people I know. But not only that, there are so many rules in just now
I know.
with regard to data protection and all the rest.
Uh-huh.
And I would not be entitled to this. But I would say that what must happen now, this is what I'm recommending, is that we should adjourn this. The board should write officially to it would have to go
Through the solicitors, we should write to
it would have to go to headquarters,
PSNI.
through the executive at headquarters, that this issue has been raised and it has been alluded to that police investigation is proceeding. Initial contact with the police would suggest that there was a complaint made, but we have no information on the complainant or at what stage the investigation might be. The tribunal has been convened and has sat and has tried to establish from the complainant in this case,
Are they aware?
are they aware and was unable to do so. The tribunal has now adjourned until it is definitely known that there is no ongoing live police investigation. Now, to be honest, if that complaint was made in May 13, and it is even
No, he said that thereafter, you know.
thereafter.
You know,
He
meant the
meant
other
the-
things like the traps.
the police, the very first thing, now I know for certain this, the police would have to take some initial steps. Now, I know there's strap for man for another, but they could not justify ever allowing a year, 18 months now to pass without having established some facts of the case.
The complainant will allege that he lodged his complaint with the PSNI, you know, around May, June 2013,
Yes.
and
Yes.
nothing was done about it.
Ah.
And he probably, I think, has the complainant, whoever the complainant is, has a separate complaint in now about the failure of the PSNI to act on his complaint.
Yeah.
A file was passed, and PSNI disclosed this to our solicitor off the record. A file was passed to an investigating officer
Right.
in May past, which is a 1 year after. And that, at that point, the investigating officer did initiate an investigation. However, he has not been able to proceed with it because he is waiting on the complainant to provide further information and further evidence.
You see,
Whoever that complainant is, and
well,
that's
and that's
what-
him, because that's exactly what our papers tell us, that he is making a complaint on behalf of others, but he has never named those others. He hasn't brought any of those others with him here today, and the chances are, okay, maybe a few people were a bit upset, and I'm guessing, but he's motivated by his intense dislike for religion, so he's trying to make an issue of this. The people who expressed their discontent, they weren't happy with the pastor saying on it. Those people probably don't feel strong enough to want to bring it to this stage.
They've been hearing it for whatever reason.
And they're reluctant to even make a formal complaint to the union or bring it to this low level of inquiry. The police have probably found that they went to him as the complainant, right? Mr. Scott, we need the names of the people who were present, the people who have told you they were present. We need to interview them to list exactly what happened and as best as well as possible get the exact words spoken. He hasn't been there because those people don't want to.
Or else because he's waiting for this procedure to
Yes,
run its
yes.
course,
And-
thinking that
But that,
If he went
something for
today,
him.
he'd withdraw the police.
If I was him, I wouldn't.
Right.
I'd be pushing on with it. If I was him
But-
and this complaint was
No, but we're not ruling on the hate crime.
No, absolutely not.
no, we're not. But what we're doing is we're.
Listen to them.
It
If we're not dealing with the hate crime, why don't we listen to his complaint?
Yes.
The risk here is that the outcome of your process could be seen as conflicting with the criminal process, isn't it?
I will go again.
We don't one statutory body, and while you're independent of the board, you're still appointed by a statutory body. One statutory body is taking action, and we could ultimately, as a board, I suppose, be liable for some sort of action about us failing to, act in accordance with protocol.
Could we not run with it?
We can choose to adjourn today to seek, as you suggest, Tom, written confirmation from PSNI as to whether or not there is an investigation going on into these matters. Now, whether they will, can they disclose what the case was?
What they can do and they must do, because they have to defend the legal process as well and make sure that there's nothing that will prejudice their investigation. They have to tell us. When I know of police procedure, and I still worked in the police headquarters up until last June, and I have seen a number of officers being disciplined and I could tell you I would rather go before a court of law than go before a police disciplinary court for the fact that they failed to keep people informed under the charter, they failed to keep people informed of the progress of investigation, or they failed to efficiently and effectively pursue the investigation. Now,
but in fairness, Tom, if the police are waiting on him to give them information,
we can't say that.
We can't say that.
No, but I'm only saying, I'm only going from the police point of view, right? The police can't do anything about it.
They can't, but then they can do something about it, because the police have to make a decision. The police have a duty to investigate and determine, just as we have to determine. They have made an approach to him by now.
To the complainant.
To the complainant.
Whoever that is.
They have made an approach to the complainant, and the complainant is the one you start with. He makes a complaint, he alleges must prove. Where is your evidence? The police then have to make reasonable efforts to obtain that evidence. If those efforts after a reasonable time fail to provide that evidence, then the police have a duty to sit down and say, I have this investigating officer, I have interviewed, I've spoken to the complainant, Mr or Mrs so-and-so, and I have made numerous appeals, and they will have to log every time they talk to that person, and they will have done that in their book. And to date, this person has not provided me with the names of the people who were present, and blah blah blah.
And that's exactly the stage that we're at here, and that's exactly the stage the police are at. He, I imagine, or whoever the complainant was, imagines that as soon as he goes the hate crime line, they'll be out immediately questioning this or that one. He doesn't get it. The police, before they commence any investigation, have to actually be persuaded that there is a case to be answered. And that's the problem. They don't have sufficient evidence to even write.
If Mr Wilson is guilty of hate crime, they would have to arrest him. And they will not arrest him.
You see, I think what I think is he has backed all the horses. If you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Right? And he's backed all the horses, right? And this one here is going to scupper it. But rather than us going away and coming back in 6 weeks' time, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Could we not? Because there's going to be no difference here in the day and here in 6 weeks' time, and not making any decision. Right?
No, I would say that.
Are you suggesting that we go ahead with the hearing but don't arrive at a conclusion?
Yes.
Simply
and if the police, if he withdraws his allegation to the police, which I think he's going to have to do, right, then we can make our decision.
No, I don't think we can. I don't think we can. I think that we should wait and get it officially sanctioned by the police that the investigation is closed.
I'm inclined to agree with you, because the other two people here sitting here and all of this and here, because evidence are also quite possibly going to be involved in the police investigation.
We're involved in a number of people.
Again, if I was on his side, that's actually potentially compromising the investigation.
It is. No, he's the one.
Because they will hear verbatim what his accusations are.
Exactly.
So you can only see he's actually potentially compromising the complaint which he or whoever has actually lodged. Now, he'll not take it well if we decide to adjourn you. Of course we won't. I think that would be important then to emphasise. We are simply adjourning. We firmly intend to return and to hear this complaint.
You're right. We're actually helping him.
We can set a date. Well, if we adjourn, we can set a date that it's adjourned until such a time. Although I have to say now, I'm not sure how long it will take the solicitors, the legal solicitors here, the legal team to get from the police a definite answer.
Again, I'd be very happy to say to them today that on the instruction of the Tribunal, I will contact the board solicitors today and instruct them to write to the PSNI to get written that, and that's about, we don't have anything written at this stage, and I think that's probably the
And let me tell you what happened, if I can give you an insight into what happened. There will be a whole lot of bells ringing at headquarters, and there will be a direction going out on behalf of the Chief Constable from a senior team up there to Banbridge, or the Commander of E Division, to give us the exact position of this. And if some investigating officer sitting out there on his butt and has lost interest in this because no witness has been shown by him, because no witness has been shown by him doesn't mean the police officer should lose interest. No, he'll get his knuckles wrapped, but he'll be given 14 days to have his investigation completed. An investigation may simply be that I have corresponded and communicated on several occasions with the complainant, no evidence is forthcoming. And that's, the police don't have resources to waste all day chasing up there.
But the other thing I'm thinking of is, do you see year 14? Year 14's gone. They're not out of school anymore.
I know, but that's a real consequence.
Well, it is, because that's nearly a third of the people that were in that room.
But they're still alive, you see that.
Because the police are not going to interview.
But we can't, regardless of what the outcome will be, it's not going to change what happened. So we can't say that we must finish this while the year 14s are there. Those year 14s, if there was a hate crime that had to be investigated by police, they'd pursue them if they're at university or if they've gone to England.
No, that's going to take.
I know, but we can, that's not the case, or that's not what's important. What is important here is that by having an inquiry here today and exchanging evidence and exchanging views, we are compromising.
Around same events that we've been around.
Yes.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yes. No,
from a protocol point of view, from I don't know.
Why was this not done before this tribunal was called?
Called, yes.
I sought to ascertain whether or not there was.
Why did we not ask?
Well, you see, we had to set a date 2 weeks ago when we first met. We had to set a date, and it was something that you weren't going to get an answer over the telephone ever from the police. You're never going to get an answer.
I might have been involved by not going earlier to the police, but I sought to ascertain from the school, because I was informed by Peter O'Rourke the school will know if there is an investigation, because an approach will have been made to them by the investigating officer. I asked the school, they said no approach has been made.
And I think we had to have this step, we had to have this morning.
Yes.
And now we're reasonably certain, I am absolutely certain, that the, what we've been told, both from the legal contact with the police and from these people here, is that we can't be sure that an investigation is live. And in fact, the fact that it hasn't been officially concluded means it is live, even though it's going over and probably intended to go over. But the police must put the rubber stamp on it over.
Yeah.
They must stop.
Is it not possible for him to go to the police now?
That would be entirely.
Yes.
That'll be entirely him, but
But then he.
well, we can't compel him or ask him
No,
to do
no.
anything.
Oh, you could ask him.
No.
I'd be surprised if he wasn't already doing that. I mean, the way he has interacted with me, I'd be very surprised if the PSNI weren't getting the same emails regularly. With all sorts of interesting things,
Well, if he came in here now and said, look, boys, I've been talking to the police, I phoned them there and they've no witness in this. I even at that stage, I'm not trying to put this off.
No, you're right. What we want.
I'm not even sure that we can take his word for
No,
it.
we want a written statement from the PSNI to say whether there is an investigation, and if there is, has it concluded, or when do they anticipate that it will conclude? Can they say it probably won't be any
Because I can see you're writing up in terms of what was on here today, the interchange of views and everything else. It would scupper.
completely compromised on the
The
investigation.
investigation would be
Well,
up to
why don't
them.
we just let the police deal with it?
Well, that's
We
what
have
we
no-
have.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We have no role there.
No, we have
you
a
will,
role.
you will.
We have a role. The police can only deal with the criminal aspect of hate crime. The police should have done by now is establish if there's evidence. And if there's no evidence,
I
then
think they will say that's what they've been trying to do.
yes. Well, at
Maybe
this
not as
particular
active as
stage,
I thought.
since a complaint was made, and the file was handed to a constable in May this year, that's 6 months. The police should by now be in a position to say, we have not been able to obtain enough evidence to further this investigation. The complainant does not seem to want to, or is unable to provide us with any more information. Therefore, we mark this file, we'll close this file. So there's now no live investigation. We can continue. If the police went ahead and prosecuted the pastor for hate crime, we would still have to conduct this tribunal, because our duty here is to discover the liability of the Board of Governors.
I thought we had nothing to do with the hit.
No, we don't.
We don't, but because it's a...
When you compromise the hate case,
It's exactly the same events that there at the PSNI Investigation.
We're investigating the same events, that's what it is.
Exactly the same events, and that's the risk here.
And it's getting publicity through...
but we don't know exactly
people.
what the pastor did say, and we can't go into that.
No.
You know, and that's the
Yeah.
only thing that the police can go into.
Yes.
You know, because the police are really, at the end of the day, would have to, first of all, convict the pastor
Exactly.
for a hate crime,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then the Board of Governors are compromised
Yeah.
because of that, right?
Yes.
Now, what we're doing is, we are not investigating the hate crime
No.
as such, right? We're investigating, did the Board of Governors, you know, carry out their duties in running of the school,
Yeah.
you know, and did they treat the staff right, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's anything got
No,
to
don't
do
do
with
it,
hate crime.
we're not dealing with,
No,
we're
but
not
it's the
dealing with
same
a...
set of events. You cannot make a judgment as to whether the Board of Governors was failing its duty or not until you actually know what happened. And that's the problem here. You cannot.
We never know what happened.
Well, that's what you're trying to establish.
That's what we're going to establish.
This
Look,
process.
No, you
this
don't
is the
really
process,
know.
this is the process I see it, as I see it. We must adjourn, we must get it in writing, there is now no police investigation being pursued. So we come back and we start here now, and we start all over again. Or if the police say we are pursuing an investigation and say it goes to court and say Pastor Thingamabobber is convicted, then we still resume again here, and the fact that he's convicted means nothing to us. We're still looking at what steps the Board of Governors take to discharge their duty and prevent this from happening. We still have to find whether the Board of Governors will or not. The fact that Pastor's convicted will make it an awful lot easier for us. You know, but we cannot proceed today. We cannot start to mess about and make this evidence and exchange evidence and allow that to be legal. Because even everybody who took an oath of secrecy and went out of this room and never spoke about it again, that is not sufficient. The fact that process has continued and has been investigating this here before the criminal proceedings have, it's never done. You can't get
If you could articulate that, all of that, and explain to them as well that
yeah.
this panel is absolutely determined that they wish to hear this.
Absolutely, I
They
do.
wish to see it through to its proper conclusion. They really do. But simply on the balance of judgment and having taken legal advice and so on, feel that it would be potentially prejudicial
Yes.
to the
I have no
others to
problem with
proceed
that.
at this point.
And
We're absolutely determined that we're going to proceed.
Yeah. Let me assure you folks, personally, I have a greater interest in the outcome of this tribunal than I've ever had in the outcome of any other tribunal.
Oh, it's completely different.
It's completely different. And I'll tell you why, and I'm speaking from a Christian point of view. If the pastor did what he did, and if he was as vitriolic as he is alleged to have been in what he said, I think that's wrong. At the same time, I like to see, and I'm sure maybe all of you do, the Christian influence that is in our schools. I like to think that our clergymen can go in and give a nice talk to our children and contribute to the ethos of our schools the way they have done. A person that goes in there, a radical person going in there and talking in the way that he is alleged to have talked, doesn't do our schools and the Christian ethos in our schools any harm. So I'm interested in getting the truth here. I really do want to see.
Yeah.
And we may never know all the truth.
But if you hear everything that's coming from that side, right, the pupils didn't object.
The what?
The pupils didn't object.
Oh, they didn't object.
They didn't
But I
object,
tell you
yeah.
something. But that even
And the parents didn't
we discussed
object.
this earlier. We discussed this earlier, where you have a sort of a regime that seems to be dominating. Maybe they were scared to object. There could be a reason. If it was done in the way that he said it was done, and if that pastor ranted, as they say he ranted, about homosexuality. I can imagine, don't get me wrong, I'm not a person who sits comfortably with same-sex marriage and homosexuality and all that sort of thing. But I have every sympathy for some young person who's in that school and who's totally and absolutely confused by their hormones and by their sexual identity and all the rest of it. And to listen, if it was said, to listen to somebody saying that, you know,
You're going to commit suicide.
aye,
There's no.
he's pushing them a bit further towards the rope, you know.
Yeah.
That can't be allowed to happen.
No.
Exactly.
Oh, I know that.
I'm interested in the outcome of this here, and I'd be honest, if hate crime could be proven, I'm the first one to recommend that he be prosecuted. I would not defend a person that would espouse that sort of hate. And I'm not prejudging. I mean, this is if he did what these people
If,
say in a manner.
there's an awful lot of ifs and all
That's
that.
the problem here.
There's
There's too many ifs. Too many ifs.
So
I only like to point, is Morgan on the appeals tribunal?
I think she is.
She is
served.
Oh yeah, oh she's a member.
I have served.
Oh, she's on the panel of appeals, so you can be called to serve on the appeals panel.
Oh no, I have been on a
Yeah,
couple of.
right, are we agreed, folks?
Yes, that's all right.
I honestly think we have no options. So, wait a minute, John, if you're all happy, we'll adjourn.
Well, not happy, no.
No,
and we can say that, you right in order to say we're not happy that we have to.
Because I think it's an awful waste of time.
I think,
Definitely, I mean,
I think this police investigation is a screen.
It's a screen.
There is nothing going to come up that police
There's absolutely,
investigation.
I can assure you, there couldn't be anything come up.
to me,
There couldn't be anything come
Because
up.
there's nobody going to say what he, you know, unless they have a tape recorder.
Well, if what you would do, and I'm thinking of a person who's investigated many, many crimes, what you would do is you would,
excuse me, John, but it's almost a year.
you know, I know.
Ah,
Do you think you're going to remember?
Exactly.
Not.
Exactly. What you do is,
Doesn't make sense.
oh, there is ways. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Thank you very much, Councillor, for your patience, but we had to make a decision on this issue as it stands at the moment. And the situation as it does stand at the moment is that the board solicitors, for our information, have tried to elicit from the police whether or not a live investigation is ongoing, and it would appear that there is. The matter has not been closed. We must therefore take it that a police investigation at whatever stage is somewhere out there and still running live. Okay? We had hoped that perhaps, you know, we got this information yesterday, we had hoped that perhaps today we might be able to elicit from the school or from the complainants here as to what stage they thought it was at or whether that was progressing, but we have to take it from the information we've been given by the police that the live investigation is still running. Whether it will go further or not, we don't know. Since the issues of hate crime are completely and absolutely inextricably linked with everything else that's in these papers and emanate from what is alleged to have happened in these papers, it would be totally inappropriate at this moment in time for this tribunal to continue. Bearing in mind that if there is a police investigation, it could result in criminal proceedings being taken at a later stage, and this would prejudice any person's right to a fair trial. What we have done as tribunal, we've asked Mr Unsworth here as the clerk of the tribunal to contact the board solicitors without any delay and have them write to the police and get an up-to-date state of the investigation. Now, we don't know what will come out of that. The police will either say we have pursued this or we're taking it no further. They must rubber stamp it at some stage. They must either say it's a closed investigation, it's a cold investigation, it's not any longer being pursued, or it's ongoing. In which case, if it's ongoing, this tribunal will adjourn indefinitely until the outcome of any legal proceedings or criminal proceedings are concluded. Now, that's entirely now different. We are anxious to hear this. This must be determined, and there's a statutory requirement on the board that now the complaint will be made to determine the outcome of these applications. We will see it through to the end. But we must observe the rules of legal protocol, and we can't further this inquiry while there's one running in tandem with the police into what may be criminal proceedings arising from this. Do you all understand? Does anybody want to ask me any questions?
The one thing I don't understand, Chair, is everything you've just said we knew yesterday.
Yes.
Through you, when I spoke with John last night, well, he didn't say it, but I have to assume that the legal advice wasn't to not proceed. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been brought here this morning. And I understand that the legal advice was it's a matter for the tribunal to decide whether to proceed or not.
That's exactly right.
Yes, but are you not overriding it?
Down to police procedures, and I could have said even before the legal services rang the police the other day to try and find out some information, I could have almost forecast the fact that they will not get a definite answer. You will not get that from the police on the phone.
So that's why this gentleman was asking me on Friday.
Yes.
3 times.
You see, Chair, it's 18 months since Walter raised the issue with the PSNI.
Yes.
It's longer since I raised it with SMT at all levels. There's an email track record that could paper the school hall. I do notice that you've not got the full bundle in front of you.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
We have all your correspondence, yes.
Did you get the full email record?
I've got email, yes.
That's submitted.
No, that's not the question. I'm asking the chair, if you don't mind, Mr Unsworth.
You're asking me what?
Did you get the full bundle of the email record, etc.? I just don't notice it in front of you.
I've got what's in this here, which contains emails between you and other members of staff. This
Okay.
emails between you and the teacher reps on the board of governors.
Thank you.
Emails between you and
Thank
the
you.
chair.
Thank you.
So we have.
I'm
Yeah.
fine for you confirming that. Thank
That's
you.
not an issue for the tribunal to decide the delay and what caused the delay and things like that. We will decide on the basis of the evidence that is produced.
Okay.
Potentially. But the evidence that we are expecting to hear will probably be the same evidence that will influence the outcome of any criminal proceedings.
Okay.
Because they're inextricably linked.
Yeah, I want to make a
Let me finish what I started off saying.
But you did ask us if we had any questions, so we're trying to put those to you.
Okay, sorry, well I'll let you continue.
I just wanted to make the point, Chair, and I have sat on tribunals where you're sitting on the panel, and if the legal advice was that it was not unsafe to proceed, it appears to me that the tribunal has been put in a position where they're left to make the decision, and they're making the decision that it is unsafe, even though the legal people
No,
didn't say
it
it.
wasn't unsafe, it was left, in my understanding it was left, that we would try and elicit somewhat further. Now, let's put a hypothetical case to you here. Now, this is hypothetical, Mr Scott, I have. Assuming Mr Scott was the complainant, the person who made the complaint to the police.
Or assuming he was the only one,
Assuming he was the only one who made the complaint to the police.
because that may not be the case.
And he was to say, oh yes, I have never pursued that and I don't really want the police to be involved and I'm withdrawing that. It would leave us still with a decision to make. Whether or not would it be safe to take Mr Scott's word on the fact that there is no longer, he's not pursuing any complaint with the police, so it would be safe for us now to proceed. We would have to decide would it be appropriate for us to do that. But that's not happening this morning. We are left with, and I think the legal service rather hope that we might be able to elicit a little bit more about what the police investigation is.
But Chair, what I don't understand with that is, if the allegation to the police is that a hate crime may have occurred,
Yes.
I don't know, but I don't think a person can then withdraw it if the police suspect that a hate crime is taken. In a criminal case like that, in a civil case, I think you can withdraw your complaint, but I don't think you can. I could be wrong. I don't think you can if it's a criminal.
No, the police have to withdraw it. The complainant has to withdraw it, but if there is no evidence, once a complainant makes a complaint, they're obliged to produce a certain amount of evidence that will substantiate that complaint, and the police will then advance on that, then they will try and build on that evidence and strengthen that evidence and see if there is a strong case. I imagine this would happen.
Yes, and then put it
they reach
to...
a stage where either they have sufficient evidence to proceed with the prosecution, or they have insufficient evidence, in which case then there comes a time, and there must come a time, when the police say no further action can be taken in this matter. But at that stage they would inform the complainants, and indeed if there has been the allegation made against a named person and he has been informed that a police investigation is going on, they would be duty bound to inform that person that no further action is being taken.
Yes.
We would like to see that from the police, and it is our instructions, Mr Unsworth, to write to the police, so the legal service write to the police and get exactly where they stand on this matter.
And do you think they'll give it to you if you ask a genuine?
I think they will. They will not give us any confidence. They will not breach the Data Protection Act. They will not say the complainant is Mr. or Mrs.
Right.
So-and-so. They will say a complaint has been made. The police have taken this, that and that steps to determine if there was a case to answer, and either they're pursuing it still and there may be a case answer, or they have found a case to answer and the matter is closed.
Well, the one last point I want to make is through you, Chair. Again.
Before you go on,
Okay.
I just want to finish the point you raised there. You did say, why did we let it go to this stage today?
Well, that was my final point. I was going to say, we thought last night we could proceed with caution.
And I spoke to Mr Unsworth about whether or not we should proceed. We had gone so far, we're so close to adjourn, it would have been difficult at that stage. We thought, let's try and see if there's anything we can further develop that will allow us to go forward on safer ground. So I take responsibility.
Mr Gayton, did you get the agreement with the other two tribunal members on that design?
Yes, I actually
Okay.
here, we
Right.
have debated it, and my problem was, right, in that whenever each side disclosed additional information to what's here, right, we thought that would compromise if it did go any further, because we are not in a position to investigate. We don't have powers to investigate. The police have the powers to investigate, right? We thought we could have run with this. You know, I thought last night that this was going to run, right? It is only when maybe you get down to the nitty-gritty, right, in terms of the two sides, right? And there are still unknowns, you know. The solicitors have tried their best to get information from the police, right? It would have been really your duty to try and see where you stood with the police, right?
Sorry,
and because...
if I made the complaint
if
and
you
other
were-
people,
if you were-
and
yes.
other
Well,
people,
in terms, you're the claimant today, right? And I think it nearly would have been, not a duty of yours, but it would have helped your case to get it to run today if you had known what was happening, because it affects your case.
well, it's not my case, it's
This is your case here today.
my first paragraph in the submission says these complaints by W. Scott INTO are made in the capacity of trade union rep in this school on behalf of INTO members, concerned non-INTO members, and also deeply troubled non-teaching staff. One who is secretly of different sexual orientation, who states she's now feeling very vulnerable in this workplace. So please don't say it's on me.
No.
But I can't talk to those people. I can't speak to those people.
I must
I have to
qualify-
talk through you.
I must qualify that basically to go ahead with the further exchange of evidence here today would jeopardise, it could jeopardise any
Okay.
proceedings
Yeah.
that the police may decide to take, and that would not be in the favour of the person or persons who are interested in seeking justice.
Okay, right.
Just on that last point before we leave it there, Chair, just for our own knowledge, at all points Walter has been acting as the INTO
Yes.
accredited
I accept.
school representative on behalf of his members, and some people who are actually not members, although he doesn't have the authority, if you like, or the accreditation to represent people who are not members, but he does, and it's not a personal complaint that Walter Scott is making.
That is accepted by the panel, and you have every right to make the complaint if you feel justified, and the school have the right to be here to defend any complaint, and it's our job to impartially look at the representations that both of you will make and to arrive at a fair conclusion.
One last question, if I may. The reason we're sat here today is because there's been a failure to investigate, and the email track record shows that I have made representations to everyone and his dog up to the top of the management structure within the school and without the school. Mr Unsworth had representations made directly to him by email in June by Mr Daly here last year, 2013. Now, part of our case would be the fact that the school have failed to investigate and have an email there back off Mrs Main that says the issues have been dealt with. That's the sum total of a complaint of the reply to these proceedings to a accredited INT or rep. Now, the failure to investigate by the school, they were given notice within 3 weeks of that first offending event, the assembly. Mr Unsworth was then contacted by email the following month, and the statement was made that if we can't get this done through the correct routes, as Hunter House did last week in Belfast, and if it was dealt with like that, we wouldn't be sat here, we would take other issues. So if the board are anxious to hear this, why have 18 months passed before we're sat here? Why have the board not investigated? And I may say that apparently the PSNI say, seeing as this is being adjourned, that could be a separate hate crime in its own right.
Yeah. Well, the board are not, it's not up to the board to investigate, it's up to the board to constitute.
Kirkton Home Primary School,
yeah.
The board investigated, they suspended the 2 joint principals simply by an assembly that was on a scale of 1 to 100. The controlling authorities in England.
We are here to consider
But you just told me it's not the board's responsibility. It certainly is.
The board have put together, convened this tribunal to make the inquiry into the case of collective worship in the school.
No, Chair, we have to take issue with that. I mean, the complaint is, amongst other things, collective worship, the allowing a platform for the delivery of hate speeches, but one of the complaints is failure on the part of the Board of Governors to investigate or report back to complaints put forward, regardless of what the complaints were.
Yes, that will all be considered when we make a deliberation.
That's okay. I was afraid you were saying.
We won't look at what steps the board have taken, and the tribunal has the power to impose some conditions afterwards if we find the Board of Governors have been negligent in any particular,
and to make recommendations.
Has acted unreasonable with respect to the exercise of any power conferred in the performance of any duty under any relevant provision.
That's okay.
We have already looked at those provisions and where we stand in it, and it may be in the course of the hearing that we find that we have actually some other provision has been infringed that may come within our remit, and if so, we will deal with that.
I have a difficulty with the words that may come within our remit. I would put it to you, Chair, that the complaint is a number of issues, all of which, or some of which, the complaint is that the Board of Governors has failed to act properly or was about to act improperly and so on, and that it's not confined to that one event of collective worship.
Well, can I assure you that we will look at every aspect.
That's okay, that's all I wanted to hear.
And the process since it began, and where it falls within the remit of this, we will include it in our decision making and decide upon it.
Okay, that's okay.
I can give that assurance. We will give everyone here a fair hearing. And we will remain, we have to remain within the remit of our tribunal, and where it falls within the remit of the tribunal, it will be given due consideration and determination.
Okay.
So, we will adjourn, we're going to adjourn now, and I don't know if it's practicable to be able to give you a date. I doubt it would be, because
all I can assure parties concerned is that I will contact the board of solicitors immediately to ask them to write to the PSNI as the chairman has outlined to get them written.
Well, I'll make a point of it, the department, a different point.
Which we did have at present, to get like written information, as the chairman has outlined, about the states that.
And I'd be right in saying, Mr Unsworth, that all correspondence that we initiate in relation to this particular aspect will be available and disclosed to all parties. So any request would be through the police, and any responses we get from them will be immediately communicated to you. And as soon as there is some factual determination that allows us to go on, we will reconstitute this hearing.
Tribunal.
That's important to stress. So we will, of course, provide a copy of any correspondence to the two parties here.
But Chair, one last point. Because it's been 18 months already since complaints were made, and the PSNI no doubt are busy and so on, and things may take more time. There's another equally important issue. There may or may not be a criminal offence has taken place. Yes. That'll be determined at some point. But the board has been informed, and the department's aware, that there's an allegation that a board of governors is failing in its duty to deliver what it's meant to deliver and so on. Now that of itself is a very serious issue. It doesn't happen too often. And that's a pressing issue as well, because at some point it's going to be determined that that board of governors didn't act wrongly, or it did. And one might be able to argue then, hypothetically, well, the inordinate delay in dealing with the issue meant that that board of governors was facilitated in continuing to transgress, for want of a better word. The point I'm making is PSNI is important and hate crime is important, but here we're also talking about the board of governors of a school who has responsibility for hundreds of children, and that's an equally pressing point, and that should be put to the PSNI. I think that point.
Well, absolutely, I agree that we have to push for a definitive answer from the PSNI.
And quickly.
And I think that I can't see why they can't in writing. You know, a phone call, you get an answer that comes off the cuff. We all do that. You deal with the call and you answer with what's within your present counsel. A letter will require some positive steps to be taken to identify who is investigating this and who is what the line management system is and what steps have been taken to pursue the investigation, or if it has concluded, why has it not been, that information not been conveyed to all the parties involved.
Okay.
So a letter, I think, and I would put the strongest urgency on that for the weekend.
Can I just make one final promise point through the chair, Mr Unsworth? I now have a statement from a member of staff confirming the availability of those chick tracks in the library till at least 2011. That's been publicly denied. They were in the school. There's no evidence of it from the school. We had a pupil who committed suicide this summer. Now, Mr Unsworth asked me for any evidence that that pupil would have been at school during that time. So I'm making the point, we see it as a pressing issue, because whether that's a link or not, there are pupils out there who are no doubt at their age questioning their own sexuality, and the stuff that's been made available to them, including on suicide, is not conducive to a state of mind of a young individual who's perhaps questioning issues like that. And I would say to you that
that's why it's pressing.
You know, that is a serious issue, that the issues aren't being aired, never mind addressed. The board has failed to investigate, unlike controlling authorities in England investigating similar goings on in schools in Bradford, London, Birmingham. And fair play to those controlling authorities for not waiting 18 months, taking the issues by the handle, and perhaps dealing with them, and perhaps saving other people's young lives.
The point's taken.
Thank you.
We have been engaged in the last few weeks too.
Yes.
And prior to that, I have absolutely no knowledge.
Okay, well, you would have heard it today.
What has been going on until we received this evidence package that we have.
But that was since this was submitted.
Yeah.
If you understand.
I think Walter, Chair, is just re-emphasising the point that I'm making, that there may be, and I say maybe, children at risk out there.
Yes.
And the hearing of this case may help address that.
Well, maybe even,
potential risk.
Maybe even the open discussion with Matthew will encourage the principal here and the chair of the board to look and see if there are anything out there that may be at risk.
Those issues were raised at a very early stage through the Child Protection Officer, and I got to thank the Vice Principal of the school, and it was nice to get a reply back, because I'm not used to getting replies back on these issues at all, and the reply was thank you for that information, and that's all I heard. And that was 18 months ago.
Well, there are a lot of issues there that will have to be
Yes,
determined.
certainly. Thank you.
We're not resolving this one.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming on. I do apologise for the fact that we can't I do hope you all are still understanding.
Is there any way that this
Because there's nothing confirmed that you've got to explain all the issues.
hear what's going on here? Is there any,
Even
any advice you
if-
can give people as to
Well,
Sorry.
move
what I said to Mr Unsworth is on this, I would say that when the higher authorities in the case look at this, if there is a live investigation that has not been pursued to this date, I would say that it's like rolling, that there's people jumping to
Yes.
attention and doing things.
Just on the police, Katrina Rowan has confirmed that George Hamilton, the new Chief Constable, is very keen to move issues forward. I have that from Katrina Rowan, not from George Hamilton.
I would agree. I'm sure that there will have to be the first question that someone's going to ask in the case is, why are we still sitting with this issue?
Yeah, that's agreed.
And that will in itself be an investigation, but we will be putting the strongest sense of urgency in this. We need to know so that we can proceed.
Yeah.
Okay,
If they simply
yep.
give us if they say to us, we're not proceeding with this, we'll not be asking why. We'll simply have that as the official state of the investigation, and we can proceed, and we will. And I assure you, we're keen to hear all the evidence here.
Oh, good,
And
good.
We're very keen
Yeah.
to make a determination, and we're completely independent. We will make that determination on the basis of the evidence, and insofar as the law and the legislation allows us to do so, and we'll consider all the issues that are involved.
Well, thank you.
That is within our remit.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You'll
Thank
always be
you.
open to challenge it, and we say if you think we've done something wrong, I'm sure you will.
Well, we've already got correspondence.
So, Mrs. Meehan and Mr. Bell, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Unsworth.